many more must I now? How many must we lose until the island people their own destiny can choose? From immortal Robert Emmet to Bobby Sands MP, who was given 30,000 votes while in captivity. He was a poet and a soldier. He died courageously, and we gave him 30,000 votes while in captivity. Thomas Ashe, he gave everything in 1917. The Lord Mayor of Cork, McSweeney, died his freedom to obtain. Never one of all our dead died more courageously than young Bobby Sands from Twinbrook, the people's own MP. He was a poet and a soldier. He died courageously, and we gave him 30,000 votes while in captivity. No more he'll hear the lark's sweet notes upon the Ulster air, or gaze upon the snowflake pure to calm his deep despair. Before he went on hunger strike, young Bobby did compose the rhythm of time, the weeping winds and the sleeping rose. He was a poet and a soldier. He died courageously, and we gave him 30,000 votes while in captivity. Forever we'll remember him, that man who died in pain, so his country, North and South, might be united once again. To mourn him is to organize and build our movement strong, with ballot box and Armalite, with music and with song. He was a poet and a soldier. He died courageously, and we gave him 30,000 votes while in captivity.
Carja, today would not have been possible without the hard work and dedication of the committee. And I would like to thank Addie Baker, David Crossgrove, Rory Dugan, Kieran Gallagher and Paul Baker for all the work that they have done. And I'd like to the committee up onto the stage. Rory's going to say a few words on their behalf.
Everybody here? On behalf of the committee, we welcome everybody here today to the Collins-Pembroke area for this long overdue statue unveiling of our Republican hero, Oglach Bobby Sands. Initially, we gave ourselves a 2-year time frame to raise the necessary funds to erect Bobby's statue. However, due to the sincere generosity of people throughout Ireland, which included our young children and youth, who participated in the sponsored walk from Twinbrook to Bobby's final resting place in Multown Cemetery, alongside that, the huge contribution from our comrades in Scotland and America, many of whom are here today, we were able to reach our overall target within weeks, which enabled us to move forward building this worthy project. Specific mention must be made to Padraig McAdam and his team for bringing this project to life, but also our committee member, former blanket man and Republican life sentence prisoner Paul Baker, who helped tie a lot of the ropes together, and especially in Scotland, and in doing so created good and lasting friendships that we hope will last a lifetime. And also everyone else who was involved in this, who have made this day possible. You all know who you are, and most of us are here too. So if you please, would you give a round of applause to everyone involved for their valiant efforts. Lastly, when we set out in this endeavour, we realised that today's unveiling was not just about Bobby alone. This is not only our tribute to him, but to all Irish Republicans who died in service to the ideals of the Irish Republic. It is also a tribute to all freedom fighters everywhere. It doesn't matter if it was resistance in Belfast, Derry, South Armagh, Carrickmore, Rosslare, Castlewellan, or even now on the streets of Gaza, Jenin or Ramallah. What the oppressors of the world needs to know: do your worst, we defy you. If the spirit of freedom knows no bounds, and it's a spirit of freedom will carry the day. Go to meet him, my officer.
Carja, I was born just months after the hunger strikers. It was their dedication, it was their vision that has us here today, inspiring my generation and people and millions across the world. His writing and poetry still resonates with those who are oppressed. And today, we're asking Sue Ramsey to read from his diary.
As most of you know, but for the younger generation here, Bobby kept a diary when he first started the hunger strike on the 1st of March 1981. And he only wrote till the 17th of March. So I'm honoured to be asked to do this, and I'm going to read Bobby's last entry into his diary on Tuesday the 17th of March. St Patrick's Day today, and usually nothing noteworthy happened. I was at Mass with my hair cut shorter, and it was better for it too. I didn't know the priest who said Mass. The orderlies were giving out food to those returning from Mass. An attempt was made to give me a plate of food. It was put in front of my face, but I walked on as if nobody was there. I got a couple of newspapers today, and as a kind of change, the Irish News was among them. I'm getting any news that there is to be got from the boys anyway. I saw one of the doctors this morning, an ill-mannered sort. He tires me. My weight is 57.50 kilograms. I've had no complaints. The governor was with me and gave me some lip. He said, "I see you're reading a short book. It's a good thing it isn't a long one, for you won't be able to finish it." That's the type of people they are. Screw them. I don't care. It was a long day. I was thinking today about the hunger strike. People say a lot about the body, but I will not trust it. Yes, I think there's a kind of fight involved. At first, the body doesn't accept the lack of food, and it suffers from craving for food and from other things that constantly torment it. The body fights back. Sure enough, But at the end of the day, everything returns to the chief thing, the mind. The mind is most important. If you don't have a strong mind to resist with everything you have, you won't last. You won't have any fighting spirit, but then where does the mentality come from? Perhaps from the desire for freedom. It isn't certainly that that's where it comes from, but if they aren't able to destroy the desire for freedom, they won't break you. They won't break me, because the desire for freedom and the freedom of the Irish people is in my heart. The day will dawn when all of the people of Ireland will display this desire for freedom, and it is then we will see the rising of the moon. On the 23rd of March, Bobby was moved to the prison hospital. In the by-election on the 9th of April, Bobby was elected MP for Fermanagh and South Tyrone. Bobby died on the 5th of May after 66 days in hunger strike and 26 days after being elected MP. 100,000 people attended his funeral. Francis Hughes died on the 12th of May after 59 days. Raymond McCreesh died on the 21st of May after 61 days. Patsy O'Hara died on the 21st of May after 61 days. Joe McDonnell died on the 8th of July after 61 days. Martin Herson died on the 13th of July after 44 days. Kevin Lynch died on the 1st of August after 71 days. Kieran Doherty died on the 2nd of August after 73 days. Thomas McElwee died on the 8th of August after 62 days. And Mickey Devine died on the 20th of August after 65 days. For a meanwhile.
Folks, our main speaker of the day needs no introduction. He is a visionary and inspiration to me every single day and to so many out there. I call on former hunger striker and MLA Pat Sheehan.
Dús tá fearann na fáilte roimh a ligean seo inniu, tuigeann amach tábhachtach seo. Ba bhfuilm a bhuagas a ggóil leis an coiste, agus leis na heagrathirí as an méid obair tá deanta acu chun an dealamh seo a fháil, agus as an corú le teacht agus lúirt an seo inniu. Tomorrow May the 5th marks the 44th anniversary of the death of our friend and comrade and one of the great leaders of our struggle, volunteer Bobby Sands, after 66 days on hunger strike in the H Block's Long Cache. Bobby was 27 years old when he died. 9 other hunger strikers died between then and August the 20th. They were Frank Hughes, Raymond McCreesh, Patsy O'Hara, Joe McDonnell, Martin Herson, Kevin Lynch, Kieran Doherty, Thomas McElwee and Mickey Devine. All of them had been born into and grew up in an orange state that had been established after partition on the basis of a gerrymandered sectarian head count aimed at giving unionism a permanent and perpetual majority here in the 6 counties. It was a state based on supremacy, institutionalised sectarianism and discrimination, the denial of civil rights and the abuse of human rights. When the civil rights campaign came onto the streets in the late 1960s, the state responded with violence and brutality. And that was the political context in which Bobby was growing up. His own family was intimidated and driven from their home in the mainly unionist area of Rathcoole in the early 70s, which was when they moved here to Twinbrook. Bobby was of a generation that decided enough was enough. It was no longer an option to accept meekly the oppression from the unionist regime and the British government and its military. It was time to fight back. All of those who died on the hunger strike were witnesses to the brutality of the state they lived in. The attacks on peaceful civil rights marchers, the pogroms of 1969, internment, the torture of prisoners, British Army massacres in Ballymurphy, Derry, Spring Hill and the New Lodge, as well as the sectarian killings of hundreds of innocent nationalists by Unionist death squads. The hunger strikers were exemplars of a generation that believed the only way to bring about political change was by the use of armed struggle. Subsequently, many thousands of young Irish men and women ended up in prison, where they asserted their right to be treated as political prisoners. After a lengthy hunger strike in Crumlin Road Prison in 1972, the British government conceded special category status, which was political status in everything but name. However, within a short space of time after that, the British began to roll out their criminalisation strategy. They instructed their diplomats throughout the world to portray the conflict here as some sort of criminal enterprise, and they began using terminology and vocabulary associated with criminality when referring to our struggle and the people involved in our struggle. You see, the British, with all their military might, could not defeat the IRA, and so they turned their attention to the prisoners, believing they were the soft underbelly of the struggle. They thought if they could force the prisoners to accept criminal status, they could then drive a wedge between Republicans and the communities from which they came. They thought they would then isolate and marginalise Republicans and ultimately defeat our struggle. The front line of this battle was to be played out in the H blocks and Armagh Women's Prison, which our enemies thought would be the breakers' yards for Irish Republican prisoners of war. The consequence of this was almost 5 years of prison protest. First, the blanket protest, when Kieran Nugent famously told the Screws that if they wanted him to wear a prison uniform, they would have to nail it to his back. Kieran then lifted a rough blanket to cover his nakedness and keep warm, and hence the blanket protest was born. That escalated to the No Wash protest and ultimately the hunger strikes of 1980 and 1981. Brutality, beatings, deprivation and humiliation were the order of the day, and we were in a situation where we believed the only way to bring it to a head was by having a hunger strike. Some have asked if there was not an alternative to such a drastic course of action. Well, believe me, every attempt was made to avoid a second hunger strike. Bobby had been appointed as our Kionford, our officer in command, when the first hunger strike began in October 1980. When that ended without a resolution just before Christmas, Bobby entered into talks with the prison administration to try and find an honourable settlement to the crisis. He wrote in his prison diary in relation to the second hunger strike, "Some people may blame me for this hunger strike, but I have tried everything to avert it, short of surrender." But notwithstanding Bobby's efforts, there was a clear alternative to hunger strike. The British government could have ended its vicious and vindictive criminalisation strategy, and the prison regime could have stopped the beatings, brutality and torture of naked, defenceless prisoners. They didn't, because they thought they could defeat and break us. They thought we would bend the knee and eventually capitulate to their torture and brutality. They thought we would accept the criminalisation of our struggle. Danny Morrison paints the picture vividly in his introduction to the book Hunger Strike. He wrote, "The British government, the RUC, the courts, the prison administration thought they could criminalise my generation of Republican patriots by breaking the prisoners. They took away their freedom, then their clothes, shoes and socks, and locked them up 23 hours a day. Then they took away the walk round the prison yard in fresh air under blue skies. They took away their beds. When this didn't break them, they took away the light that streamed through the windows. They took away the space under the door. They took away the music, poetry books and literature, photographs of loved ones, letters home, their visits, their very lives. leaving them with nothing, or so they thought. But the British hadn't considered the calibre of the men and women in our ranks. They hadn't factored into their strategy the centuries of prison resistance that was part of the psyche and DNA of Irish Republicans. Perhaps I should have paid more attention to Bobby's writings, where he frequently made reference to heroes from previous phases of struggle. Thomas Clark is in my thoughts, he wrote, and McSweeney, Stagg, Gahan, Thomas Ice, McCaughey. And even while facing into his own death, Bobby's thoughts turned to comrades who had gone before him. He wrote this about our comrades who had died on hunger strike in the 1970s in English prisons. Bobby wrote, "I've come to understand, and with each passing day I understand increasingly more, and in the most sad way, that awful fate and torture endured to the very bitter end by Frank Stagg and Michael Gahan. Perhaps, indeed yes, I am more fortunate because these poor comrades were without comrades or a friendly face. They had not even the final consolation of dying in their own land. Connolly, Pearse, Clark, Ice, McSweeney, Stagg, Gahan, who were all mentioned by Bobby, were the unbowed and unbroken Republicans who we in the H-blocks and Armagh looked to for inspiration. They were the heroes who we looked up to, and we were never going to let them down. To go on hunger strike is, as you would imagine, a massive decision. It isn't just a matter of whether you can see it through to the end. You also have to take account of the impact it's going to have on your family. And Bobby articulates this in the very first entry of his prison diary on the 1st of March 1981. "My heart is very sore because I know that I have broken my poor mother's heart, and my home is struck with unbearable anxiety. But I have considered all the arguments and tried every means to avoid what has become the unavoidable. It has been forced upon me and my comrades by 4.5 years of stark inhumanity." In light of how the first hunger strike ended in December 1980, most of us in the blocks believed it was inevitable that someone would die on the second hunger strike. And it's a measure of the man that Bobby Sands was, that he decided he would lead the second hunger strike, initially on his own, only to be joined after a 2-week interval by Frank Hughes. As far as Bobby was concerned, if anyone was going to die, it was him, but that there would be a 2-week window in which he hoped the British would move to resolve the situation before others died. And given the enormity of his decision and the face of the almost certain death, many people understandably want to know what gave him the strength, what motivated him and the others who died in the H-blocks in 1981. And the best answer, I think, can be found in Bobby's own poem, The Rhythm of Time. There's an inner thing in everyone. Do you know this thing, my friend? It lies in the hearts of heroes dead. It screams in tyrants' eyes. It lights the dark of this prison cell. It thunders forth its might. It is the undauntable thought, my friend. That thought that says, I'm right. And that was a thought in my mind when it was my turn to join the hunger strike. I received a small column wrapped in cling film, and when I opened it, I discovered a handwritten note from the leadership on 2 cigarette papers that had been stuck together. And the note was addressed to volunteer Pat Sheehan. And although my heart was in my mouth because of what I expected to read, I was pleased to see volunteer in front of my name, because I have always been proud and always will be proud to have been a volunteer in the Irish Republican Army. The poem went on to say, "You have volunteered to go on hunger strike and have been selected to replace volunteer here in Doherty. By embarking on this course of action, you will be bringing the movement into direct confrontation with the enemy. So if you have any second thoughts, step aside now and nothing less will be thought of you. But if you go ahead with your decision, you will be dead in 2 months." And it was as stark and as blunt as that, and it definitely rocked me back on my heels. But that was the reality of what faced all of us going on hunger strike, not least Bobby himself. But Bobby was our leader. He was the first, and I've no doubt everyone else drew inspiration from his leadership. I know I certainly did. Bobby also led the way in other areas of the struggle. He was the first Republican of our generation to stand for election in the North when he was a candidate in the Westminster by-election in April 1981 while he was on hunger strike. Margaret Thatcher, the British Prime Minister, had asserted that the prisoners had no support and that the IRA had no support. There was massive pressure brought to bear on the electorate from all quarters not to vote for Bobby. But despite all of that, the people of Fermanagh and South Tyrone came out in their thousands to cast their votes and elected Bobby as a member of the Westminster Parliament. And in the process, they blew Thatcher's assertion completely out of the water. That day, April the 9th, 1981, Bobby's election was the single biggest news story on this planet. An IRA volunteer on hunger strike in prison had been elected by the people. We got the news by way of radios that had been smuggled into the blocks. We had been warned that whatever the result, there was to be no reaction, no shouting or cheering, because the screws would then know we had a radio in the wing and they would begin searching for it. Everybody in H3 adhered to that order, with the exception of Tom McElwee in the other wing, who let out an almighty roar that must have been heard the whole way to Balahi. Tom was always the rebel. And despite being locked up naked in a 7-foot by 8-foot concrete cell, I can honestly say, without equivocation, that was one of the happiest days of my life. When I heard Bobby had won the election, I leapt in the air and jumped around that cell, punching the air like a man possessed, without a sound coming from my mouth. The people of Fermanagh South Tyrone had vindicated and validated our right to be recognised as political prisoners. That was the day it really dawned on me, indeed on all of us in the H blocks, that we were not alone. 44 years on, and looking back now, I realise that was the day that criminalisation was defeated. Remember, the rationale for criminalisation was to isolate, marginalise and ultimately defeat our struggle. So how has that worked out? Well, the Orange State is gone, unionist domination has gone, there are more Republicans than ever before, and Sinn Féin is the biggest political movement on this island. Therefore, the opposite of what was intended by the British with their criminalisation struggle has come to pass. Not only was criminalisation defeated, but the injustice of partition and the role of the British state in Ireland was exposed to international scrutiny as never before. By their heroism and sacrifice, Bobby and the other hunger strikers ensured that the cause of Irish freedom was renewed, and now in 2025 we are closer than ever to undoing the injustice of partition and reuniting our country. Their bravery set in motion a series of events that makes the momentum for political and social change unstoppable and irreversible. And that momentum will carry us forward to the realisation of an Irish national democracy, a republic where the rights and identity of all our people, of whatever persuasion or background, will be accommodated and cherished. Bobby didn't die just to prove he was right. He had a vision, a belief and an idea that his suffering and death would lead to a better world for the rest of us. And today we are in a better place. We no longer need or expect our young men and women to risk their lives and liberty on active service or to hunger strike in prison cells. And that's not to say there isn't work to be done. We need to redouble our efforts and all of us put our shoulders to the wheel. Irish unity is not inevitable. We need to make it happen. It's then, as Bobby said, we will see the rising of the moon. Today, 44 years after his death in the H-blocks, Bobby Sands' name lives on. He is remembered and honoured especially by those living under oppression and struggling for their own freedom. There's a monument to the hunger strikers in Cuba. Jerry Adams and I unveiled another in the prison yard on Robben Island in South Africa. I spoke at the unveiling of a large mural of Bobby in Rome in Italy. There's streets named after Bobby as far away as America, France and Iran. And here today, in his own local area, we will witness the unveiling of this magnificent statue. When all of us standing here today are dead and gone and largely forgotten about, Bobby Sands and his comrades will still be remembered. They will remain a beacon of light for freedom-loving people everywhere. But Bobby should not be remembered as a hunger striker only. Like all of us, he was multifaceted. He was a loving father of an 8-year-old son, and also a loving son and brother. Bobby was a friend and comrade to many. He was a community activist, particularly here in Twinbrook between his 2 periods of imprisonment. He was a musician, a songwriter, a poet and a prolific writer. He was a Gaelgoer. He loved our native language. Bobby was a blanket man, a political prisoner of war, a socialist, a leader, a revolutionary, a volunteer of Oakley na Heron. Bobby Sands was a young man who resisted until his last breath. He was our hunger striker. He is our hero. And I want to finish off now with another quote from Bobby's diary. It was part of his entry from March the 9th, 1981, his 27th birthday. Well, I have gotten by 27 years, so that is something. I may die, but the Republic of 1916 will never die. Onward to the Republic and the liberation of our people. Today we salute volunteer Bobby Sands, Fúrse Bás ar son Saoirse na HÉireann. And we're going to have the unveiling of the statue with 4 former POWs, Sienna and Sinead Walsh, Jennifer McCann and Colin Scullion.
Doesn't seem quite so long ago. The last time that I saw you, ain't it funny how the memories grow? When it seems they always phone around you, when they try to break you in a living hell, but they could not find a way, and so they killed you in an H-block cell in hopes it's all